story begins hundreds of years ago in the ancient city of Ephesus, where lived a mean and arrogant king who went by the name Decius. This corrupt king, by the orders of Allah Almighty, would not abide. He commanded his people, "You must worship idols. It's I who gets to decide." He'd hold ceremonies to worship idols, and from very far and near, people were forced to come and attend the events, many of them out of fear. But at the king's court, there were ministers who were secretly faithful. They helped the poor in secret too, and to Allah they were grateful. Because under the king's rule, worshipping Allah was forbidden. The ministers tried hard to keep their beliefs and acts of worship hidden. Once, one minister saw the soldiers harass an old man and heard him shout, and then got into an argument with the king, and his secret was nearly out. He told the corrupt king, "Please release the old man, for he's just like you and I. God will not have mercy on us if we do nothing when we hear him cry." The king's face turned red, and he yelled at his minister with a frightening glare. "What God? And how can peasants be compared to me? Oh, how did you dare? I am the son of the gods, and all you worthless creatures are so much lower. Get out of my palace this instant, before you get to see my very destructive powers." From then on, this corrupt king started to have serious doubts. How many more faithful ministers might he have walking about? Were there any others worshipping God instead of his man-made idols? The king decided that discovering and arresting them was vital. But some ministers learned of his plan and in secret decided to gather. At the great minister's house, they consulted with one another. At his house, Maximilian said, "With the king's oppression, we're fed up. The king is trying to arrest all the faithful, and now we can't make him stop. This corrupt king continues to arrest and oppress the believers. Plus, he's now started to watch our every move because he's unto us." Another minister said, "Then those of us who truly believe may have no choice but to pack up soon and secretly leave." Another asked, "But what about the faithful people all around? Without us to get them out of trouble, no helpers may be found." Maximilian replied, "At this point, there's nothing we can do. Decius, the king, will punish us and those we help out too. We must hurry and leave this wretched town, without a doubt. So come, follow me, for I know a secret path that can lead us out." Soon the ministers were safely out the city, but they didn't know where they could find a safe place to eat something and rest and take shelter. They searched and found a shepherd with whom they felt they could talk. They asked, "Can you help us find a shelter after our very long walk?" The shepherd looked at them and said, "You're dressed like the king's man, but I see you're humble and your actions are noble. For you, I'll do what I can." "Wait, you worship Allah too?" The ministers couldn't believe their ears. He replied, "Every day Allah gives me from the sheep's insides milk that is clear. I came to know Allah through his signs and blessings. Now come please, be my guests." I have a small house in the nearby village where you can all get some rest. The ministers were so grateful to find safety at last after all they'd endured. They knew Allah would help them out, so they always felt assured. On the way to his house, the minister told the shepherd the whole story of how to worship Allah. They had left behind much wealth and glory. They also told the shepherd, "You must know it's us who the king's soldiers are after, and we can't stay with you for long, or you'll be punished for giving us shelter." The shepherd said, "Don't you worry, for I'm a believer and in Allah I trust. So I'm ready to do what's needed and right and face any hardships I must." In the house, the ministers all prayed, and then Maximilian had a true vision. Allah instilled in his heart the knowledge of a cave nearby, and they made a decision. They asked the shepherd about the cave and thanked him for letting them stay. The shepherd insisted to go along to show them all the way. When they entered the cave, they thanked Allah for having been their guide, for without his help, they would have all failed, no matter how hard they tried. Then, something mysterious happened to them all, for everyone was fast asleep. And this wasn't just any regular sleep, for their sleep was unusually deep. They didn't wake up when the next day a soldier shouted, "I found them! Over here!" Yet the soldiers didn't dare attack the sleeping men, for in their hearts Allah put fear. The king called them all cowards and said, "Unlike you, I can fight." But he didn't dare go closer himself, for this was truly a fearful sight. "It's so creepy. Are they sleeping or dead?"
I'm afraid. Why don't you go first?
The soldiers said to each other, "If we harm them, we'll surely be cursed." After much thought, they decided to cover the cave opening with a rock and engrave on it the king's opposition's names who were supposedly defeated and stuck. Yet people didn't praise the king, but the ministers, for having been faithful and brave. The Almighty kept their story alive, the story of companions of the cave. Meanwhile, they kept on sleeping as small rays of sun kept their bodies warm. Allah commanded their bodies to turn often, and they were kept from harm. So for days and months and years and decades, Allah kept them asleep, safe and sound, until one morning, some 300 years later, they woke up and looked around. Who knows how long we've been sleeping? They started to ask and wonder. Perhaps a day or so? Maybe even less. My God, I'm dying from hunger. But how can we sneak into the city? We have no choice but to try. We have to figure out the latest news and find some good halal food to buy. So together they pushed and moved the rock that had the cave's opening covered. They thought they had to be very careful because they'd be killed if discovered. So Maximilian covered his face and went to the city to buy some bread. But on his way, he saw many changes to the city, which gave him a feeling of dread. When the baker saw Maximilian, he said to himself,
"This man looks odd by all measures."
and when he paid him with an ancient coin, he yelled,
"This man has found treasure!"
So people gathered around the strange man whose coin was 300 years old. Then he was taken to the judge, as all were waiting to hear the truth as it was being told. The companions of the cave are alive! People everywhere started spreading the news. They were shocked and excited, and they had so many questions and different views. You mean they woke up after 300 years? Is that possible? How can that be? Others said, we will never believe it unless with our own eyes we can see. So the people slowly gathered, and toward the cave they walked. Maximilian rushed to the cave before them, and to his bewildered friends he talked. Then they all came out and said to the people, "In Allah's hands is our birth and death. Allah has willed it that the oppressed and righteous will finally inherit the earth. We disobeyed the king and held on to our faith and took refuge in the divine. And Allah saved us from the oppressive king and made our fate a sign. So stand for the truth no matter what, and obey his commands without fail. For this world will end in death and destruction, but the truth shall always prevail." People's faces had turned pale, and there were tears running down the faces of most. They were touched and shocked, and happy and sad, and these men they liked to host. Their elder told the companions of the cave, "Come with us. There's no need for fear. The king of this town is now a faithful man, and we all worship Allah here." But the men thanked him and went back into the cave, for they didn't know what to do. What was their divine mission in this period of time? To them everything was so new. They prostrated to Allah. "Your mercy has saved us from a punishment so harsh, and if our mission is done in this world, to you we're ready to rush." So Allah the Almighty took back the breath that so long ago they were given. They wouldn't need it where they chose to go, for one has no needs in heaven. Their happiness became eternal, and their story has continued to live on. For us